Hello and welcome to episode 46 of Generations Apart. I'm Robbie.
And I'm Jay.
And on today's episode, our most ambitious episode yet, we're taking a look at music tech and the rise of the bedroom musician slash producer. I've been learning music production at home for the last few years, and there's a lot of really cool tech that I've had a go at. So we're going to talk about all the different tech that I've used. I'll caveat this episode, though, by saying that I'm by no means an expert. I'm still absolutely an amateur in the music space. But hopefully we'll pique the interest of some budding musicians in the audience. Before we get into that, though, Jay, what's new with you this week?
I will tell you. So I'm still riding the wave of last week's nostalgia, and I'm loving at the moment reaching that age where there is content being made for me as I sit here right now as a 40-year-old man, which absolutely shouldn't be designed for me, but it pulls on those nostalgic strings from childhood. And this week it's the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a TV show that I loved growing up. The OG, this is. I am old enough to have enjoyed the OG. I don't know anything beyond the Power Rangers, Ninjas, and whatever followed when they went to space and back, and I don't know. The complete originals. And I came across something on Kickstarter, which I've backed this week. I haven't used Kickstarter for a while, so that's also a little bit nostalgic. And it's the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers The Return, a new comic series, which has been put together in collaboration with the original Pink Ranger, Amy Jo Johnson. But let's be honest, anyone of my age who's listening, if you didn't have a crush on Amy Jo Johnson when you were a teenager, what were you doing? So the Pink Ranger has collaborated to write this comic book series. I don't know too much about it. The art looks pretty incredible. I like the idea of it just being collated into this book, so it's going to be made into a graphic novel. There's various different degrees you can back it at. I had to talk myself down from the more expensive tiers, and I've just bought the comic. But I'm intrigued. Again, I'm not a comic book reader normally. It's certainly not how I digested the Power Rangers as a kid. But I like the idea that it's taking the Power Rangers that I knew from my childhood, projecting them forward into adults. I think as most people will know, the actor who played the Green Ranger sadly died a couple of years ago. And they're basically telling the story here of where Amy Jo Johnson's character, the Pink Ranger, and the Green Ranger, I think, have a child, a daughter, and the daughter goes on to take on the mantle of the Green Ranger.
Oh.
I don't know if it'll be any good. Not too worried. It just caught my attention. Like I said, it tugged on those nostalgia strings, and we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. This kind of this idea of, I'm not going to call it a remake, but a revisit. We've got Disney making X-Men 97, which I'm again hugely excited about to revisit and pick up from the X-Men cartoon that I loved growing up. And this stuff's been made for my generation, and I'm excited about it. So I thought I would share that with you. I know it's not really gaming or tech or very loosely associated. There were gaming games, the Power Rangers. But yeah, so that's what I backed. I thought it was a bit of a novel, and I thought if anyone out there is like me, of my generation, who maybe liked this when they were growing up, by the time this goes live, it should still just about be active. So I think there's 14 days left on the campaign as we're talking to you right now. This will go live in about 10 or so. So if you're listening early enough and you are interested, you can go on and back it. You don't have to spend more than about £20 to get yourself a copy. So if you are interested in just seeing what it's all about, it's not an expensive Kickstarter at the lower end. But you might find it interesting. So,
very cool. Very nostalgic. I used to watch Power Rangers a lot as a kid as well. I really liked it. I've never been a comic book reader, though.
I'm not a big comic book reader. I've bought a few over the years, a handful of the Marvel ones, and enjoyed them, actually, when I've sat down and just kind of taken, like I did, I think it was like Secret Wars, Planet Hulk, a couple of those kind of graphic novels that a friend recommended, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's not something that I would, like I say, becomes a big interest of mine, but every so often, for a nice special piece, it's something that I'm interested in. I was going to say, it's out of shot at the moment on camera, but kind of up there somewhere is my original, from childhood, boxed Green Ranger and Dragonzord figure. I used to have the Megazord as well, but I don't know what happened to that in childhood, but I always kept that one boxed purely and simply because, and this is a little story for you, my granddad, who sadly passed away this year, he queued up outside Argos at stupid lines when I was a kid to make sure that I had that Dragon's Sword on Christmas Day. And he always told me that it'll be a collector's item, which I always thought was a little bit silly. It's got a bit of value. It's nothing crazy, but it means something to me for sort of memory reasons, but also it's one of the few things toy-wise as a child that remains boxed. It did get played with, don't get me wrong, but yeah, to have the full box and everything else, it's a nice
into
piece
your
to have on the shelf.
collectibles.
No, I don't. I'll be honest, I didn't keep the box for me. I played with that toy. My mom kept the box because at the time in the press, there was this kind of idea that there weren't enough of them made.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think that's particularly true. I know it's reasonably collectible, like anything from that era in a box. But anyway, there you go.
Nice.
There's a nice tie back to something I have in my room. So that comic book will sit alongside that as like a very small Power Rangers corner. I don't have anything else.
Nice.
What about you?
So this week, I know we talked about it a while ago, but the Bigscreen Beyond reviews have started to pop up online. You know, the VR headset we spoke about a while ago. I think you brought it up on one of the episodes a long time ago, which is a new VR headset by Bigscreen, I think is the company. And is it Beyond that's the device? And one of the ones that I watched was the Linus Tech Tips review. And Linus is historically very critical of VR headsets. He's a big fan of the Valve Index in comparison, but he is a really big fan of this Bigscreen. I think he's using it to replace his Valve Index, which is kind of the industry leader on the PC front, at least with VR headsets. And he talks about some of the features that I forgot that we already spoke about, like the fact that you get the 3D printed mask to sit on front of it, so it's completely customized to your face. And he talks about the pros and cons of that, which is obviously it's perfectly suited for you and it blocks out all of the light because it's suited exactly to your face, but also means that no one else can use it, which is an interesting, if you're the king of the house, I suppose, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you like sharing with others, it's not great. But yeah, it was actually like a really interesting video diving into it. The quality seems really good, and it's just the size. It looks more like normal kind of goggles or sunglasses than an actual headset. So yeah, it's just revisiting again what we've spoken about before, but it's actually out in the wild now, and people are starting to use it, and it's looking really, really cool.
I think the reason it's as small as it is, though, is because it doesn't have any of it doesn't do any onboard processing, does it? It's cabled only.
Cabled only, yeah.
And it also doesn't have any cameras on because it's my understanding that you need, if you're going to have controllers like he's showing in that video, you need to have the motion sensors around you. There's no cameras built in for on-device tracking.
Yeah.
So I think, again, that's why they're able to make it so small. But it does looking really cool. It looks more like a futuristic headset that you might see in a movie that's depicting the future than what I would say modern VR headsets currently look like, which are a bit clunky looking and a bit
like a computer on your face.
They look cool and look like something you could practically imagine someone wearing, out in daily life versus, even the Quest 3, which I know there's a lot of people now using the AR functionality and trying to live their daily lives through it, which is bonkers. I saw someone driving a car in it, which looks incredibly dangerous.
God, that's horrible.
And all sorts of weird stuff. But yeah, I think the Bigscreen VR is an interesting device. I'd love to have a go with one.
Yeah, me too.
I don't have a use for them, unfortunately, so it's not going to be a purchase I'll ever have a real reason to make.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think next year is going to be really exciting for VR and AR because we're ending the year strong with the Quest 3. We've got the Apple Vision Pro to look forward to next year, however well that's received or otherwise.
Yeah.
And then what are other firms going to do? There's other companies in the mix here that aren't talking at the moment, that aren't sharing their devices. What are they coming out with? And Bigscreen Beyond wasn't a company anyone was talking about at the turn of the year.
True.
So who else can we expect to enter this market next year, and where does it go next?
Yeah.
It's exciting. And everyone's talking AI, and I'm sure AI is going to do great things as well. But I do think to take your eye off the ball with this stuff is a mistake.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's always peaks and troughs with these kind of new technologies. It's like blockchain as well have gone very quiet, but I'm sure they'll have a resurgence in a couple of years as well when something new comes out of that. And AI is definitely taking the hype train at the moment. VR is taking a bit of a back seat. But yeah, I imagine it'll come back again. I'd paused on this frame just to show one of the other criticisms as well, is the material that the 3D printed mask is made from. is kind of a rubbery material that seems to attract a bunch of dirt and dust, and also can get quite sweaty and gross, apparently, even if you're not doing any activity with it. So that's one thing there. But the one thing that I think is the most exciting about this is the OLED screens, which I think is the first of maybe any of the...
I think PSVR 2's OLED, isn't it?
PSVR 2, is that okay? Fair.
I'm going to have to check that now.
Yeah. Well,
the reason yourselves,
the reason that he mentions it is the blacks that you get, as in like the deep blacks when it's on your mask, they just, for OLEDs, I think it is just turning off the pixel. So it's like properly black, like pure black, not some kind of grey that you might get with LCD displays. And that makes a massive...
PSVR 2 is OLED.
Okay. Fair. Well... Fair. And it's much more expensive as well. It's like 3 times the price, but still.
Yeah, but that was something that everyone, if you remember the PSVR 2, the kind of early impressions of the device were so positive because of the OLED screens.
Yeah. It does make a massive difference.
And the visual fidelity, it really does.
The Meta Quest 3 doesn't have them, does it?
I don't know. I don't think they are, but again, they're keeping that device as cheap as they possibly can, aren't they? So I'm not entirely convinced that they do. Shall I do another quick check?
Yeah, have a quick check. Because I remember last week when we talked about the PSVR 2 getting hacked so that you could use it on PCs and how it was like a relatively affordable, high-tech item. And we were thinking whether it was comparable to the Meta Quest 3, it was around roughly the same price. But if it's OLED and Meta Quest 3 isn't, that's, Yeah,
it's not. OLED. Meta Quest 3 is not OLED.
There you go. There you go.
Interesting. All these are all the compromises, aren't they? Do you want the full experience, the $499, get yourself stuck in? And I suppose the PSVR 2 is a more expensive headset when you consider you also need a PS5.
Yes.
Although they've come down in price.
They have.
Robbie, get that purchase made.
I know.
$379, I think I saw one for the other day.
Yeah, I saw that was even through PlayStation, wasn't it, on sale for?
Yeah.
And all the Black Friday. I think because the Slims come out.
Do it.
Very tempted. Very tempted. We just got a new bathroom. It's been an expensive couple of months.
Yeah, don't put the PlayStation in there.
Yeah,
it's not the right place for it.
Definitely not. Cool. So on to today's episode. So as I mentioned in the intro, this is probably one of our more ambitious episodes, and it's because we're having to balance lots of different audio coming in and out. So I am sending audio to Jay from the various bits of software that I'm using today, and I've also got to record it for the podcast as well. So I've been tinkering around today with some tech that should hopefully make it work. So it's either going to kind of go down in flames, or it's going to be our best episode yet, of course.
Either way, we will commit to uploading whatever it ends up as. Just because I think we absolutely should. I should say, when he says our most ambitious and we've got a lot to juggle, I've got bugger all to do. I'm just sat here waiting. I don't even know what he's planning. So this episode is a complete mystery, and I'm as excited as you are to listen along. So my reactions will be completely authentic, because I don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah. It should be an exciting episode. I'm quite looking forward to it. But basically, the premise of today is we're going to talk through the music tech, the rising of music tech. As I mentioned, I've been doing some music recording, music production at home, and it's developed over the last couple of years, the different tech that I've used. And really, it's opened my eyes to the bedroom artist, the bedroom producer. You can make albums, you can make really quite professional audio at home with limited equipment and some quite cool software. So what I was going to go through is basically I was going to quickly talk through the hardware, but I don't want to dwell too much on that, because I know we've had an episode where we talked about audio hardware as we were talking about the podcast setup, and it's basically the same setup. So I'll go a little bit on that, and then I was going to talk through the bits of software that I've used, and I wanted to get your take on it, because there's a few bits of software that's quite nice, like UI wise, to look at and to use, quite intuitive, and then there's some that's really overwhelming and difficult to use. So from like a UI and design perspective, it would be interesting to get your thoughts. So we'll go through the different doors, and I'll explain what a door is: a digital audio workstation. Then all the different virtual instruments that you can use, a few effects that you can use, like amps, amp simulators, and all of the other editing tools that you can use with the audio as well. So depending how much time we've got, how much we get through, I'll just go through all of those basically.
I was going to say as well, this is I know you're going to focus on music today, but I think this is so true of the arts in general. Obviously I know nothing about the music creation process, so I'm excited to find out a bit more about it. I've seen adverts. I think Apple, in fact, are running one right now for MacBooks where they're focusing on a couple of musicians talking about how they made a song in GarageBand now. I know that
I saw that,
probably an insulting concept to what you're about to show me, because you're going a level beyond that. But, it's amazing. And if you look at, video editing, photo editing, digital art, there's so much, you can do now, filmography or videography, whatever you want to call it. There's so much you can achieve. People can make movies with mobile devices.
Yeah.
You can edit these things in your bedroom, as you say. It's just incredible what's available now. I really wish I was 20 years younger and coming at this now, because I remember when I was a kid fighting with these downloads, trying to get, the latest version of Photoshop, just to get access to some of the tools that Photoshop allowed. The idea of the sort of stuff I've got on my desktop now being available to me at all, let alone in some instances for free. I know not everything you're going to talk through necessarily here is free, but some are paid, some aren't. But if you think about video editing now, so many people are on DaVinci Resolve, a completely free, fully fleshed out video editing tool. It's incredible. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So, it's absolutely the age for creatives. I think it's exciting. It's
true. It's definitely the limitations are just getting wiped out for anyone who wants to get started. So that's what I'm excited. And in the music world especially, I think it's excited me quite a bit.
The only flip side to that is it's getting increasingly competitive, because now anyone can do it. So to stand out, you've got to be really good. But that just means that for those of us who like to just absorb and bask in other people's creativity, there's so much more of it to choose from. And so many more places to find it. So, it's great.
So, starting with the hardware then, and we've talked about this before in previous episodes, but I'll talk through a couple of bits that I've got that really helps with the audio recording and the kind of music production stuff. So I have a Focusrite Scarlett Generation 3, the 4i4, which is basically a digital interface that you can plug in analog audio into. So that's microphones, it's guitars, it's anything with a lead. So you can do like a jack out of your piano into it as well and record straight into that as well. It's basically the converter from a analog signal into digital signal, and you need that to bring it into the DAWs, the digital audio workstation, which I'll talk a bit more about in a second. But that's what that box does, and it sits on your desk and you plug everything into it. It also runs like these headphones, so I can listen to what the output is, and I've also got speakers as well that it can run as well. So it's got 4 in, 4 out. 4i4, that's what it was. And I think you've got the 2i2, which is 2 in, 2 out.
As I mentioned the other week, it's currently on the shelf because I'm using some wireless equipment that I've bought recently. But I was really impressed with it, and I bought it because you showed me your equipment, and it was really impressive. And there's a soundbite. And I thought it was a really great purchase, and for my analog equipment, it worked really, really well. And it will absolutely get more use. Like I said, it's just not quite right in the setup I have as it stands today.
So an absolute must, I think, if you're recording kind of analog audio, definitely at home. And as I mentioned, I've got these headphones, which are the Sennheiser's, I think it's 770 Pro, which I purchased a long time ago for the monitoring purpose. These are studio headphones, so they've got a very flat EQ, which is what you need when you're listening to audio, so you can, fix the EQ and make sure it's as flat as possible or as tuned as you'd like. And it's the same with these. I've got 2 studio monitors here called the KRK Rockets 5s, which 5 is the size of the cone in the middle. You can get 7s, and I think you get even bigger than that, but these are perfect for my size room. They get really, really loud. And again, very flat response, super clear audio, perfect for listening back to anything you've just recorded. Or just listening as you're playing. Quite often we'll have the band in here and we'll do like a quieter band practice rather than going to a proper practice room where I can just hop on the e-drums and they can plug in their guitars and so on. So great for that stuff. So other stuff that I use, basically I've got a guitar. So this is my Charvel. It's I actually don't know the make, but the model, but it's a Charvel. It's like a Super Strat style. Got 2 humbuckers on it. Really handy guitar. I got it earlier this year.
I'm going to have to ask for those people who don't know what a humbucker is. What the hell is a humbucker?
Okay. So this is a bit more nerdy then. So you see, these 2 stripes here and these 2 there. So traditionally, Stratocaster guitars, this kind of shape, would have singles. And these are the pickups. This is what picks up the audio. It like resonates with the strings. When it was one kind of line, it would have this awful hum And that was just due to the limitations of the tech when it was first brought out. But also, there's quite a good sound that you can get from humbuckers. There's quite a like clean, scratchy sound that you can get from them. Single coil, they're called when they're just one. These are humbuckers, which basically, if you wrap the cables on the inside round twice, it bucks the hum, hence the name. So you don't get the hum out of it that you do with a single coil.
There you go. You're welcome, internet.
A quick Google. I'm not sure
what it was. Yeah. I'm going to do that a lot this episode because you're going to say words that I don't understand.
No, that's fine. No, please.
But I feel like I'm going to ask for the listener.
Yeah, please do.
And because I don't know.
I've got a keyboard here. There's a MIDI. Well, it's a normal keyboard, but I've plugged it in as MIDI. MIDI is a way of just tracking which keys are pressed, basically. So instead of taking any audio from the actual keyboard itself, the computer just registers which keys you pressed. And then on the PC, you can use those registered presses to emulate any kind of instrument that you want. And I'll show you a few of those in a second.
Now, see, I've heard the term MIDI before. I didn't understand it in that context. So there's a YouTube channel, I think I've mentioned this before. There's a YouTube channel that I watch that has a particular melody for their show, for their channel. And whenever they do kind of different themed shows within their wider channel, they have the same consistent melody, but it's formatted and played in such a way that it fits that particular theming.
Yeah.
So whether it's the movie podcast they do, the gaming podcast, the lifestyle podcast, but the little ditties are exactly the same every time. I heard them once refer to it as a MIDI. Yeah. And I was like, what is a MIDI? Yeah. And now you've explained it. So I'm like, I understand. So it's true. It's almost like a template then.
That's true.
For a song, and you just apply the tone, the sounds you want to the notes you've recorded.
And that's the general theme that you'll see through a lot of stuff. So not just MIDI recordings, but also audio recordings. You record the raw guitar sounds. You can then, post recording, add as many effects as you want on afterwards, and then change the sound afterwards. So that's the kind of the way I record it. But I know a lot of people actually just you mic up an amp that's sat in their room, and at that point you can't really change the sound afterwards. You can do a few tweaks like the EQ and stuff like that, but it's just the raw, straight from the guitar audio, and then you use amp simulators on here to affect the sound as well. But we'll get onto that in a sec. So we've got the keyboard, the MIDI keyboard, and the drums as well. And the drums are MIDI. So I had a funny incident earlier when I was setting up the audio. I was hitting the different symbols on the drums, and it was pressing keys on the keyboard. So as I was hitting it, you could hear just different notes on the piano play. So it's also MIDI, but I've got two separate channels going into the PC. So I've got them separated, so I can have this is the piano play MIDI, and then that is the drums play MIDI. And again, I'll show you that in a second. So that's my hardware. I've got the Scarlett, I've got the headphones and the output for the monitors, the guitar, keyboard, and drums as well. I don't have a bass. I should get a bass for the studio, really, if I'm doing this, but I tend to cheat, and you can do this transpose thing where you just transpose your guitar down like a whole octave, and it sounds like a bass. And that's typically what I do if I need to track bass, which doesn't sound as good, but anyway. So that's the hardware. What I'm going to talk about next is the DAW. That's DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. And there's a ton of these about, and you've already mentioned one earlier. So the first one that you mentioned was the GarageBand. GarageBand is actually technically a DAW. It's basically a program that you use to record audio, record MIDI, lots of other different types of audio. And you can apply effects, you can edit it, you can do lots of tweaks to it. You can use virtual instruments as well, which I'll show you in a second. There's a ton of them out there. We've also talked about some in the past as well. So Logic Pro is another one that is very common in the market, but that is Mac only. So I can't use that one because I don't have a Mac computer, unless I did it on my iPad.
iPad. I was going to say iPad.
Yeah, we'll get onto the limitations of that in a sec, but basically the plugins that you need are not really all there for the iPad, whereas they would be on a MacBook. So we've already talked about that. Maybe that's my next purchase.
Well, I was going to say, I should be brutally honest. I've paid £5 a month for Final Cut for, I don't know how many months that's now been out. Used it for like 2 projects when I was in Florida in the summer. Yeah. I've touched it since. I should probably cancel that, really. It's costing me £5 a month and I'm not using it. Never mind.
Yeah. Logic Pro is supposed to be like a really good one as well. Kind of one of the industry standards. You see lots of music producers with MacBooks or iMacs or Studio Macs or whatever. But there's a ton more out there. I started on a program called Reaper, but there's also Ableton Live, FL Studio, Pro Tools, and the one that I use on a day-to-day basis, which is Qbase. So let me just kind of share my screen. I can show you what that looks like.
With any of these creative programs, I always think, and I'm no doubt going to feel this now, a little overwhelmed. It was. I remember when I first used Photoshop or Illustrator for the first time, thinking, what in the world? Moving to Final Cut Pro from kind of more traditional home movie creating tools, that was overwhelming. And then I tried Motion to create visual effects for a Final Cut, and that worked in a 3D space, and oh my God. So I think these tools, because of the nature and the complexity of them, always feel a little bit much until you start to understand how they work.
100%.
And you start to learn the workflow.
100%. I was exactly like that when I moved to Qbase. I started on Reaper. It was a friend of mine who used to do music production professionally, and he was the one who taught me all of this basically. And he showed me Reaper, which is the first DAW that I used. And Reaper is actually really quite simple to use. You can get up and running very quickly, and there's not a lot of tools and different options that are thrown at you, so you can really get started quite easily. Whereas Qbase, moving from Reaper to Qbase was really quite difficult, and it's because there's so many options, so many different features that you could use. And to be honest, I use maybe 20% of what you can use in Qbase. It's quite difficult to navigate if you're not familiar with how DAWs work. And even coming from Reaper, it's very, very different.
Did your friend ever say to you, look, Robbie, don't fear the Reaper? Sorry, it's that dad joke was brewing the whole time you were talking. I was like, just shut up so I can make the bad joke.
You were dying to say it, weren't you? I could see. I could see you itching.
It's a music-related episode. It felt appropriate.
That's fair. Although I don't have a cowbell to play, unfortunately. So this is Qbase. This is the DAW, and basically you have the tracks in the middle here. So I've actually grouped them into little folders here, but you can see I've got a bass, I've got a microphone, I've got a bunch of different guitars set up here. And when I say tracks, these are places that you can then record audio, and it will lay down on this little grid here. And if you set the tempo of this entire thing, everything should snap to that. So I've set this entire project to 100 BPM, beats per minute, for the tempo. So that means that everything I record should fit around that, and it gives you these really handy grid lines to make sure that you can line everything up, and it snaps to the grid as well to make sure you can, if you're changing things or moving things around, it still maps to that. And I can show you what it looks like when there's something actually on the grid. So earlier, just today, I wrote a little kind of drum template, and this is what it looks like when there's something on here. Now this is a MIDI, and you can tell it's a MIDI because it's got these little kind of boxes that are dotted all over instead of a traditional waveform that you might see with an audio file. And I can quickly play that. It might be loud, but I'll make sure it's quieting down in the edit. Can you hear that?
I can. Probably also worth saying that you don't need to go and watch this on YouTube. You can listen along. There's going to be plenty of music to listen to. However, if you want to get the best out of this, go and find us over on YouTube at Jay and Robbie.
Yes.
Sorry, shameless plug. This is going to be quite visual.
It is. I will say this is probably one of the more complicated looking DAWs that I've seen. So you have your grid, you have your tracks that you've added on the left, and you have the mixer board at the bottom where you have all your different volumes up and down. And you traditionally have that, and you see in the massive studios where you've got this big board in front of you, and you've got all the physical buttons to do it. This is basically emulating that, where you've got these digital sliders up and down that you can do for the audio for each track. So this is the DAW. Everything starts in here for recording, although there are programs that you can use, like virtual instruments and amp simulators, that you can do outside of Qbase or any other DAW. But for the purposes of today and for the ease of recording the audio, I'm doing it all through Qbase. So what I want to talk about first, I'm going to start with some of the analog audio stuff. And this is actually one of the main reasons I wanted to do this episode, is I recently splurged on a couple of extra amp simulators that I've been using for audio recording. And the way amp simulators work, you have a guitar signal, so you plug your guitar into your interface, and it goes into the DAW or the system directly, and you can run a program that sits on top of that. So they call it an effect or an insert, at least on Qbase, where you can add a amp after is like an effect to that particular track, so that the clean signal of the guitar is fed through to an amp simulator. And this is one of the amps that I purchased recently. This is called the Soldano SLO 100, which for any kind of metal fans or metal guitar fans might recognize. This is it's a really famous physical amp that you can buy in real life. They're very, very expensive and widely known as one of the best sounding amps you can get. So the fact that you can buy it on a Black Friday sale for like £70 instead of the $3,500 that it would cost physically in real life, is absolutely massive, and it goes to that point about accessibility for anyone who wants to try out these sounds.
I mean, to be honest, yeah, even £70 for a piece of software these days is quite a lot, isn't it? We've got this kind of culture of a couple of pound on an app store. Even that, for some people, feels a bit egregious. The £70, I think, it's still not a small amount of money for a hobbyist to spend. But as you said, relative to the accessibility point of the physical hardware,
yeah,
it's a really, really good price.
Yeah.
It's just that's still quite a lot for software, though. That's
true. And I should caveat by saying that none of this is like super cheap to get started. There are obviously cheap ways that you can do this. This is just my personal setup, but there are free amp simulators you can get that you can get some decent sounds out of. But I bought these ones recently to kind of level up. These are now becoming kind of industry standard. There's a company, Neural DSP, who makes these specific amps, the ones that I'm going to talk through in a second. So I've got the Soldano here. I've got the they do these archetypes, which is basically based on individual artists. So Rabia Masad, Mateus Asato, and Plini. I've got their amps as well, and they're all really fantastic looking amps. And historically, I'd say that a lot of the user interfaces for these amps have not been that user friendly. I would describe, and I've heard other people say this as well, that Neural DSP has become almost the Apple of the amp simulator world, just because of their interfaces are incredibly easy to use, and they look really quite visually appealing as well. If you can see this on here, it looks really good, and you can toggle the knobs just as you would the normal amp in real life as well.
I'm going to say the term, is it skeuomorphic? Is that the term? That was the term for the old Apple design, where the original iPhone had apps that looked like the physical device or the physical thing.
Yes.
And then they changed away from that. This obviously is clearly trying to look like the physical amp.
Yeah.
But in digital form. And as I'm learning this from you, Robbie, I'm just trying to relate this to what I know. So in Final Cut, I've spent similar kind of money on presets, pre-built templates and things to speed up my workflow that other people have designed. Similarly, things like Photoshop, you'll see a lot of digital artists create and sell their own digital brushes.
Yes.
So would you liken that to the music world?
Yeah.
With this then?
I would. Although what I would say is this is almost like the brush itself, and there are presets in here. So, for example, instead of selling the brushes, you can sell presets for these amps. So I've got a list here of all these different individual artists. A lot of them are like from YouTube or from bands, and they create presets on these amps that you can go in and just use their presets to get different sounds out of them. So that's how I would describe or link it to the kind of brushes. These are free. It comes with the amp. Some of them actually, I think I have seen that you can go to other artists and go to their Patreon page and pay for their file. You can download the files and then add them to your kind of folders on the background to add them as presets as well. So yeah, it's kind of a mix.
You get the same with things like Lightroom. Photographers like Peter McKinnon has got his own Lightroom presets that you can buy from him as part of his store. It's a really clever way for these celebrities to make a bit of extra money. Yeah. But for you to very quickly get the sounds that you're looking for, I think it's great. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really, really useful. And again, these are it's an industry leading amp as well. So it's the sounds you can get from are absolutely true to life, as true to life as you can get, really. But as I mentioned, the UI, you get the amp view here. There's a few other pages at the top here. You also have the stump boxes, the little pedals that you can get to go with this amp, specifically designed for this amp as well, which changes the sound slightly. So if I play a little bit, I don't know if you can hear that, but if I start clicking some of these overdrives and the chorus, you get a completely different sound. Where it starts to sound very almost 80s. The chorus sounds, I don't know, Van Halen-ish almost. But yeah,
And you get an EQ built in as well. So if you want to craft the sound of your particular guitar tone, you can do that as well. And quite a lot of the presets make use of this. They've also got a quite a visual interface where you can change where the mics would sit on the virtual cone of the speaker. So you can choose the type of mic that you would like to emulate. And all of these they actually have like studios set up to record these sounds from these amps and then emulate them on the PC. So you can choose all these different mics that you would like to use to mic up the cab, it's called, under the little amp. And that changes the sound as well. And then you can move it closer or further away to the cone. You can move it up or down. And it changes the tone dramatically. If I do that, and then if I moved it out.
The more you're explaining this, the more I see it goes well beyond brush presets. This is a product. I didn't realize quite how much was going to be in this app. And it more than justifies its price as you're kind of digging into it. I thought it was a literal amp, whereas, and which it is, but there's also a whole lot more that's going into this. Yeah. Which is becoming clear.
I would almost describe this as like Procreate kind of as an app. It's used to craft tones rather than drawings, but it's quite an in-depth app. There's an awful lot that you can do. And again, it actually can be quite overwhelming for new users. I definitely found it overwhelming, but what really does help is the presets. If you find one that you like, you can just kind of tweak it from there and change a few things. They do a ton of YouTube videos. A lot of the artists that are on here, they do the YouTube videos talking through their presets and how they made them, so that you could go ahead and actually make your own as well. So yeah, I mean, it's quite. This is I've long wanted this. I did a trial a long time ago where they give you like 15 days to try it out, or 14 days, and it was one of the favorite amps that I've ever tried on the PC. And I finally got it on the Black Friday sale recently, along with a couple of others. So that you can get quite in depth with the guitar tones, and there's a whole subset on YouTube of people teaching you how to craft the perfect tone for recording, which is quite a rabbit hole that you can get into as well. So that's the Soldano. I'll quickly talk about the other ones. They're actually very similar, but the Soldano is the only one here that is based on a real live amp, and the others are based on. They're also based on live amps, but they don't specify which amp it is. It's whichever the artist has preferred. But also they have a slightly different makeup in that you usually get 3 different amps. So the typical setup is you get like a clean sounding amp, a crunchier sounding amp, and then like a high gain amp. There's more for like metal and kind of solos and leads and things like that. But they all, again, look absolutely stunning. These look incredible, don't they?
Yeah, visually there's a lot of work gone into it.
Yeah.
There's something which is about making audio.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of effort gone into the visual.
I know. Which is refreshing because, as I say, historically, I don't think they were that interested in making the UI as accessible or as appealing as possible. But that's the difference I found in Neural DSP compared to some of the others, is that they really are focusing on the users they're actually using and not just the audio that's the output.
Do you think that part of that, perhaps one of them, is just consumer expectations? Because software now that consumers have access to, whether it's on your phone or your tablet, it looks and as good as it feels, and the look is as important as the power. But also perhaps because people are now doing this in more public spaces, and it's more widely accessible, they want that kind of over the shoulder. What's that you're working on? Oh, this is the latest. Something visually that catches your eye.
True.
Something that looks cool in the background of a YouTube video while you're making your latest song for upload. I wonder if there's just more considerations now for ways software is going to be seen and how it needs to look.
That's a good point.
As well as just how it functions.
That's a good point, because as well as the rise of the bedroom artist / producer, it's also been a massive rise in YouTube channels dedicated to talking about this tech, using this tech, producing YouTube videos that are on that are recorded through DAWs and produced into like a music video online. And there always are like the background element where you can see some of the programs that you're using. So you're probably right. Neural DSP cocked onto the fact that they could be, if they're visually appealing, they're likely to be included in music videos and then get more. I mean, that's probably how it
also becomes an identity, doesn't it? So when you're watching a video, there's the person creating it wants to be associated with the brand. It's why there's an Apple logo on your MacBook, or whatever. It's so that when your laptop screen is open. In fact, I don't know how many people have really considered this, but when you look at a MacBook and it's closed in front of you, the Apple logo is the wrong way around for the person who owns the device.
Yeah.
That Apple is the right way around for everybody else when that screen's open, because it's not for you. It's for everyone around you to know what you're using. And it's the same theory then, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
If this is on in the background, people see it, they know this artist is using the best tools, air quote. I don't know if that's true. But equally, people watching go, I want to be like them, I need that. And I know what that is because it's got a very strong visual identity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. Something else that they keep adding, they've got obviously their own algorithms used to make these sounds, but they keep adding extra features as well to make it even more versatile. So this amp and the other three have that transpose feature that I mentioned before, and I can demo that really quick. So if I just a standard power chord, and then if I transpose it down to 12, which is a whole octave down, it makes it so much lower. That's how I track my bass.
All the secrets.
Yeah. But there you go. And then the other thing that you can do is it's got this doubler feature where you can pretend that you've got two amps hooked up to one guitar, and it makes it sound like a double tracked guitar, which for most kind of rock music, you track a guitar twice so that you spread the sound, and then you kind of shift it left and shift it right. So you have almost stereo guitars that are slightly different. It doesn't work if it's the same guitar audio. It only works if it's two separate audios. But the way around that is they've got a clever algorithm here that you can spread this one signal to two speakers, but have a 6 millisecond delay between them. So it sounds like two separately recorded bits of audio, and it makes the audio sound much bigger and wider, like you're playing in like a stadium or something, which is really cool. And again, you've got other pedals in here, compressors, octave, fuzz, overdrive before the amp, and then after the amp you have things like delay and reverb, again to craft the tone even more. One thing that I will say about this one, which is one of the reasons I got this one over some of the others, is it's got a very unique thing that I've never seen in any other guitar plugin, which is a synthesizer. And we're going to talk about synthesizers in a second when I get onto the piano, but synthesizer, traditionally you use a piano-like interface to make weird sounds. So in fact our intro has a synthesizer in that does
shh, don't give it away, Robbie.
I'll release the MIDI soon, I swear. That does is the background, that do 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 do, that's a synth. So it's doesn't quite sound like any instrument, it just sounds like something digital. That's traditionally on a piano, but what Robbie Masad had managed to do with Neural DSP is develop a guitar-based synthesizer. So you can turn your guitar into what you would use a normal synthesizer for, which includes like different scales that you can get. You can have an arpeggiator, which is you play one note and it does an arpeggio, which is a few different notes based on a different scale. You can do that with your guitar, and you can get some really awful or some really fantastic sounds, which, as with any synth, that's typically how it works. So yeah, quite cool. I haven't played with it enough, and I'm not going to demo it because it'll probably sound horrible. But yeah, quite cool.
I thought that was the build-up. I thought we were going to get a synth and we'd have to decide if it was terrible or not.
Oh god, well I can see what comes out of the box.
Do it.
Oh, actually out of the box.
I quite like
sounds,
that one. Yeah. I quite like that. Yeah. Can you play our tune?
I don't remember whether. I can't remember how it goes.
You can't remember our theme tune?
I can't remember.
What a shocking confession that is right here. Episode 46, and he can't remember our theme tune.
I remember
That's
the theme tune.
Secretly, you never have to listen to it, do you? It's me that has to listen to it every week as part of the edit.
Part of the edit. Yeah, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll re-record the intro, but using this synth instead. There you go. And then I'll have to relearn it. But there you go. So that's quite a cool addition to. So again, kind of making it more accessible. You then don't necessarily need a MIDI keyboard if you wanted to do some synthy stuff. Again, you could just stick with a guitar. So it limits the amount of equipment you even need if you had this as well. So very cool feature.
I like it.
So on guitars, I think that's pretty much all I was going to chat about the guitars. I got the Mateus Asato one as well. Another fantastic guitarist. I really like his. He does a lot of Instagram videos, some kind of short videos. He does R&B interpretations of traditional songs. and his amps also look gorgeous and sound fantastic as well. Bought this the other day. Yeah, fantastic amp. But that's guitars. I don't want to dwell too much on it, even though that is one of the main reasons that I want to chat about this episode. But guitars, yeah, I mean, that's what I started on in the Doors. I didn't do much drums. It was mostly just tracking guitars, and I didn't do any pianos as well before as well. So that's where I started, and that's where you can start writing your own tracks just on guitar, which again is quite cool. You can even download, like drumming backing tracks or piano backing tracks and stick them in there, so you don't have to record that yourself. So it's a good way to get started. If you know one instrument at least, you can start on that. Of course, you've got microphone in here as well. So the microphone I'm currently using to record this podcast is not pushed through this at the moment, but you can record vocals on here as well. That's even more accessible. There's microphones in everything these days. I think even the iPad is marketed as studio grade microphones, so you could theoretically use that to record audio as well, and put that into your DAW for overlaying on tracks. And with microphones, you can add obviously a bunch of effects on there, tons of reverb, compression, and make yourself sound awesome. In fact, actually, another recent purchase I did was I was previously on Qbase 12, and Qbase 13 has only just come out. I think I mentioned that in an episode as well, because they bring them out every year, unlike Logic Pro, which is just like a permanent license. But one of the reasons I did want to get it is they brought out a new plugin that's specifically designed for vocals, where every kind of vocal plugin you would ever really need is all in this one plugin, where you can add your noise gate, you can change the pitch, you can do like your Cher impression if you really want to in here, which is quite cool.
I was going to say, is this basically your auto tuner to take average pop stars and make them sound amazing? Yeah.
Should we see if that works? I didn't test this before, but we could see if this works. On the recording, you have to tell me if it works. Can you hear? Does that change the audio for you slightly?
Not really.
Okay, let me see. Has that changed it at all? Can you hear that all right? It's not made me sound like Cher.
No, you don't. Well, not to me. It might do on the recording.
It might do on the recording.
It's not doing anything for me. You sound like normal you.
Oh, well, that'll be funny watching that in post then.
It would be hilarious if somebody else is hearing you as Cher and I'm just getting normal Robbie. Especially if you now don't put it back correctly and that just ends up being you for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, let's quickly turn that off. But yeah, so there's some quite cool tools in here as well. They've got that like a detuner as well, so similar to the transpose option on the guitars. So I don't know if you ever hear music where suddenly it goes super high pitch and they sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks, or sometimes it goes super low and they sound like Barry White. Like that kind of stuff you can just kind of pitch correct and do as an effect as part of the song.
My two children have not that long ago discovered the Alvin and the Chipmunk series, the newest one, and it's all that's ever on in our house at the moment, so I'm very familiar with that sound.
Excellent. You have to incorporate it into any music that you might record, Jay.
I don't think there's any danger of me recording music, Robbie. That's no, we don't need to inflict that on anyone.
So that's the microphones. I was going to talk a little bit about keyboards before I touch on the drums. So we've got two main things I was going to touch on. The first is like a traditional piano, and there's a great plugin I've got here by Addictive Keys. It's like it's a great kind of grand piano style, and the MIDI cable goes from the back of the MIDI keyboard into the PC via USB. I've got a USB one. Or, in fact, depending on the Scarlett that you've got, you can get a MIDI that goes into the back of the Scarlett to make that even easier as well. It's an 88 key keyboard, so it does emulate like the size, or at least the width of the amount of keys that you would have on a grand piano. And I can show you what it sounds like. I'm not really a piano player, but that kind of gives you an idea.
I was going to say, I feel like it's warming up for something, then you were just going to break out some Elton John or something.
No, I'm not. I'm not actually the piano player. My brother's a piano player. I'm not the piano player in the family. I know a little bit, but that's Jeff Buckley. I'll leave it there. But again, you can get a few different effects with this amp as well, and they even give you a little demo thing so you can hear what it sounds like. So if I press play on these, just to audition these different sounds. That was intimate, apparently.
That's the one we need for the sad version I asked you for before we started recording.
Yeah, the sad version. Yeah, we should. There's no excuse now. I've shown off all these tools, and now I've got to make different versions of the.
My expectations at my end are just going up and up.
Yeah. So that's the piano, and great for just tracking normal piano sounds that you'd like in the background. It's quite nice. It's one of the industry standards, I think, this grand piano style. So addictive keys, if you're interested in that one. I think this actually came free with my Scarlett, so you get a lot of free plugins with the Focusrite Scarlett when you buy it. I think this is one of them, as well as addictive drums. I think they do those as well. But again, MIDI, sending the key presses into the PC, and then it interprets that by sending it to this plugin here, and interpreting that as an actual piano sound, which is very clever. And it does a very similar thing for a synth. And this one is actually quite exciting, because if you have a MIDI piano, or indeed any MIDI instrument, maybe not drums, it would be challenging playing synth on drums, I imagine. But theoretically, you can play pretty much any instrument you want if you've got a MIDI keyboard and software like a synthesizer to emulate other instruments. So there's the traditional synth that comes with Qbase. This is the what's the program called? I want to call Halion. I think it's called Halion. Halion Sonic. And this is basically a place where you can load up other synths. So they've got one that comes with it, one called Flux. And so I've loaded one up here. I haven't actually listened to this, so this could sound like anything. And actually doesn't sound like anything when I press the keys. Oh. But there you go. If you wanted to do some club anthems, here you go. This is what the synth can do. And really, there's tons of different options, tons of different sounds available. Oh, God. That was lasers.
Oh, I tell you what, if someone's on a commute listening to this, it'll wake them up on that 2-hour train journey, won't it?
Yeah.
You'd nod it off.
Yes. As I said, synth is just weird sounds, crafted weird sounds, intentional weird sounds. I'm definitely not amazing at synths. It really is an art, and there's lots of different ways that you can craft the sounds that come out of them. I don't understand any of it. So I usually just go for the presets, but you can, if you want, tweak some of these knobs available on this Flux plugin. I'm not going to go too far into the synth side of things, but you really can get into a bit of a rabbit hole on that front. But what I'm really excited about, which also came with the new update to Qbase 13, is the idea of orchestral stuff that you can start now playing on your synth as well, your MIDI keyboard. So I'm going to try and see if I can get this loaded and working. We'll see if this one. It's not that one.
A live demo.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Nice.
So we've got some violins going. Oh, we did. Look at that.
Sounds like the start to the Great British Bake Off.
Yeah. See, we can make our own theme tunes. It's got some orchestral stuff in there. But there's also like a bunch of different options in here. So that's the staccato. You can have pizzicato, which is like plucked.
Oh, that sounds more like that's more Great British Bake Off.
Yeah.
Love it. I want one of those. Great British Bake Off version of the podcast theme.
Yeah, we should just do different versions. See if I did
just
record it in
the
MIDI.
through. Yeah, just do all of them.
Yes, that's called spiccato. Then we've got sustain. This is like your film scores, and you've also got most MIDI keyboards have a little dial that you can push up and down on the left to do different types of expression. So you might see it if you're watching the screen. You can see the expression going up and down as I press this, and you can really get some quite cool kind of film scorey style stuff. Let me give you an example.
Your next purchase for your studio needs to be WD-40 for your squeaky ass chair.
You like that?
I did. Very nice.
Yeah. So that was me just pushing up the expression kind of toggle so that it was basically played a little harder by the emulated violinist. Legato. Sounds quite similar. We've got tremolo. That's like the scary movie.
These are all quite... It is, isn't it? This is Halloween special of Bake Off, though.
I do have a squeaky chair, though. Sorry. And then sustained vibrato, which is my favourite. Again,
see, initially that felt like the start to Mario 64. My brain just goes to video games.
I love it. That's what you need to do. But yeah, I mean, so this is an orchestral library, so you've got everything in here, all the way from strings to brass instruments. So we've got the trumpets here. Introducing the king, you know. And we've got other kind of strings. Cello is also one of my favorites. It's got an ominous undertone that you can have in the background as well. If you'll let me play it.
Oh, that's got like Pirates of the Caribbean vibes.
Yeah, it does. It does. But yeah, and this is all through the Halion plugin, but you can load up these different libraries of different sounds in there. So we had the traditional synth library working, and this is it's called the Iconica Sketch library, this one, which is the new one that's just been added with Qbase 13, which gives you the orchestral library. And for something that comes bundled in with software, it all sounds actually fantastic, like proper premium quality orchestral samples. So again, very cool. You can start doing your own film scores, or have like any orchestral backing to any songs that you'd like, which seems to be
the next John Williams.
God, I wish. I'm not by no means anywhere near that talented to be able to do that, but I could have a little play with it. I could have some orchestral backing to metal stuff, which would be funny. But there you go. So that's the synth side of things. So you have the piano and the synth that you can use the keyboard for, and then the last MIDI instrument I've got in the office is the drums. So I have a Gear for Music electric drum kit that was donated to me by a friend of mine. I used to have a previous drum kit. It was a Yamaha one that's actually in the next room. And I use this, again, to receive MIDI to the PC and record drums. And the software that I use to receive that MIDI signal and then interpret into drums is a company called Get Good Drums by Nolly Get Good is the kind of owner of the company. He's, I believe, the producer / I think he's the bassist, I'm not sure, of a band called Periphery.
Very fortunate surname that he was gifted.
I know, right? A lot of pressure.
Worked out really well for him, hasn't it? Yeah.
A lot of pressure, though. Imagine if he didn't live up to the name.
Constantly felt like his teachers were bagging on him. Yeah, good. I'm here.
But this is the One Kit Wonder Metal Edition, and there's lots of different kind of metal sounding cymbals that you can get. You've got a China over here, and everyone needs a China if you've got a metal kit. Lots of different cymbals, toms, you've got double bass, and big fat snare as well. So you've got that metal sound that you might want to be looking for to back your tracks. You can just program the MIDI, so you can actually just write in the MIDI program and start tapping on these little squares in the grid to emulate what the drums would sound like. Or you do what I do, which is I play along in the background. So I have my my drumsticks over there, and I was planning on doing a quick demo.
I think you should, or you should play us out with a drum solo.
Play us out. Yeah, we might see if we can get that edited in. We'll see. We'll have to get it working first. I'm gonna go a bit quiet whilst I'm over here, but should be able to hear me all right. That's all you get. It's a bit fiddly, I have to say, setting up MIDI drums to a program like this. Every MIDI drums has a different way of sending the signal through. I have noticed a few issues that I've got with this one, for example, in that when you hit the snare, it double hits it, so it actually registers 2 hits of the snare in the grid. So then you have to go back and like clear up a bunch of things. But really, it's quite a lot of fun to practice with your friends. You don't need a full acoustic kit just sat in your in your room that you're using to record music. You can have an electric, tight, quiet kit, have some headphones on, and you don't have to make much noise. And also you can get some really fantastic sounds. These are studio grade drum sounds. Of course, it's not quite the same as the real thing if you mic'd up a proper drum kit, but it's as close as you can get with e-drums. So yeah, a really fun tool to use, a really fun thing to play with as well. That's what I practice drums with mostly. So yeah.
I think it's fascinating. It's really interesting. I'm just enjoying listening to it. It's a rare episode of this podcast where I don't talk for this long, which listeners will probably appreciate. And we don't often get lengthy Robbie monologues, and I think it's been fascinating to kind of get into this. It's a whole area that I know very little about, and having listened to you explain it, I now realise how much less I know than I thought I knew. That makes sense. Now I know what I didn't know, whereas before I was ignorant. So yeah, it's fascinating. I think it's really exciting. I'm super jealous because I am not musically gifted. This is not my skill set. So I watch on with envy. Really interesting.
Well, I mean, there's no reason you couldn't get into it. I think that's what I was trying to get across.
There are many reasons I'm not musically gifted, Robbie. That is the sole
definitely
reason.
Something that could be learned. But hopefully it's inspiring for some of the bedroom artists out there. Maybe it might be sitting in their bedroom with guitars or pianos and not thinking about plugging it into a PC. I think for practice sake, it's really useful to record stuff, and also just experimenting with adding layers. So I also have an amp that I can do live looping with, which is also a lot of fun. And also a good way of tracking layers to a song and getting used to, harmonies and different parts and how they might work together. But, recording into your PC, you can do something very similar. And you can actually write quite cool songs by yourself. So for a lot of bedroom artists who are just sat with an amp and a guitar or, just a piano, this is like a really cool next step that they could take to the next level of the kind of music practice.
You've obviously invested a lot of time and effort in this and in the equipment, but I know even going back years now, on the iPhone, I had an audio jack and device that allowed me to connect a guitar to my iPhone.
iRig or something.
Yeah, iRig, that was it. And I had the iRig. I don't know why I bought it. It was one of my many attempts at thinking I'd learn music if I bought the equipment, and it never happened. But, even now we've got a MIDI keyboard, which I bought years ago, again, thinking I might learn this. Never did. But my daughter has hooked it up to her iPad, and it works with GarageBand. Yeah. When you consider that GarageBand is completely free on iPad and Mac, and that you say if you've got an existing musical instrument, you might only be a suitable cable away from connecting those two things together, and the cables are relatively cheap. Yeah. Especially now, it's either Lightning or USB-C. It's a dongle. It's not an expensive investment if you've already got those other pieces of equipment around you, a phone. Or a laptop. So it's fantastic. And like you said, it's getting more and more accessible. Yours is a little on the inaccessible end now, but that's because you've upgraded over time and you've invested in the skills. Yeah. But I'm sure you started out with much less.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the one thing to say is that it is. Just like you, in looking at this, I didn't realize how much I didn't know about this stuff until you start getting into it. And even now, I'm still overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that's in here that I've just absolutely no idea about. Like there's whole elements of Qbase that I've never used before. Like there's a sampler in there that you can really get in depth with. I did have a play with that where I sampled a friend of mine. He sent me a voice note, and I just used that and started doing like remixes with it and stuff. But again, like I've got no use for that with any of the music I use. So there's tons of stuff in there that's really not for me, but are available to everyone else. So just use as much or as little in there as you'd like. Start small, try not to get overwhelmed, and there's tons of tutorials online. One of the main reasons I chose Qbase over some of the others after Reaper was I was looking for something a bit more complete as a DAW. But I also was looking for one that's kind of industry standard because I knew there'd be tons and tons of videos online to help me along the way. Yeah. Which was the challenge I had with Reaper. Although it's much easier to get started, there really wasn't a lot of guidance online, or at least I was struggling to find the stuff that I was looking for. So that really helped with my choice. And I would definitely take that into account if you're choosing what to use. Just have a look online, see what's popular.
I mean, come back to that statement we made right at the top, about being born 20 years sooner, or being 20 again. That it's not just the accessibility of the tools or the hardware and software. It is the knowledge, because again, you go back 20 years, as well as not being able to get your hands on this software and this equipment, or you also couldn't get the learning. This stuff was gatewayed. It was expensive. You had to go to college, or you had to go to university. You had to get a professional studio to support you. Now, as you say, you can buy this stuff. You can download free tools, and you can watch people on YouTube for hours and hours on end and learn so much. It's just so much more accessible. Creativity in general is so much more accessible now. It's just amazing. I love it.
It is. Yeah, it's producing some amazing talent as well. Some of the YouTube artists out there are just incredible. Better than some of the professionals I've seen. And they just learned it at home, and just post YouTube videos and just become absolute virtuosos of their craft just by learning online and sitting in their bedroom and practicing a lot. So it really just become accessible at that point. Interestingly, actually, there's a show on YouTube that's come out called Music Mansion, which has basically gathered a bunch of YouTube guitarists and YouTube drummers and singers and musicians, put them in a mansion for a week and got them in groups and got them to write a song and turned it into a reality show. And it's all on YouTube. It was all YouTubers who set it up, all YouTubers who created it. And it just goes to show that people who are not, traditionally in the commercial music world are really making amazing content online. The boundaries are just not there anymore. If you can be a YouTube artist and get invited to like a YouTube reality TV show where you can do stuff like that, it's just crazy these days. But very
you only
exciting.
got to look at someone like Mr. Beast and the celebrity sort of status he's now amassed. And then you watch his videos and you see his team. I'm going to put it in air quotes. I mean, no offense by this, but they're kids. Yeah. And to me, they're kids, and they're doing the filming, the editing, the storyboarding. They're doing all this. They're traveling the globe. It's an amazing opportunity for creative people who will apply themselves now just to get out there and experience things that used to be reserved for people, the elite really, or those who were selected by studios or moguls. Now you've got that complete freedom to make it your own, make it your own way. So yeah, it's just amazing. I hope it gives me hope for the world that my kids will grow up into, because there's lots of other things about this world right now that aren't so much to like, but this is something that I think is really positive.
True. Cool. Well, I think we'll leave it there. That's all for this episode. I'm glad that it went as smooth as I'd kind of hoped, or at least expected. We'll see in the edit, because it might have not come through as smooth.
I was going to say, if all the music's has been in Discord and none of it's been into OBS now, maybe not so smooth, but I'm sure it's worked. It's all sounded good mind.
I'll lay on some really crude after audio of just some terrible recordings or something to emulate what I was trying to do, if that's the case. Or if not, we'll just upload it and it'll be hilarious. So that's all for today's episode. Do like and subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on all good podcasting services. And yeah, get creative. Try out some recording software, and the budding musicians out there. It really is accessible, so give it a try. So we'll see you next time.